we all doing today? My name is David Gugino, and today I have a very interesting book for you all today. Now, the book I'm about to show you has a very interesting title, but before I get into that, I want to let you know that this book, the title of it, you're going to have to watch towards the end to find out what the title is, but I want to know if these videos speak to you, and I wonder if these books are good to you. I think the books that I've reviewed have gone very well, and I just want to know if there's ever a book you want me to review. I'll read it as quick as I can, and I'll try to review it, or just let me know if one of these either speaks to you, or is just something different or something that you like, or just let me know how I can make these videos better. If you want me to re-review a book, or if you read one of the books I've reviewed and you found more detail to it and you want me to review it more, just feel free to let me know. But otherwise, this book that I have here for today is The Courage to be Disliked, the Japanese phenomenon that shows you how to change your life and achieve real happiness, by Ishiro Kishimori and Fumate Koga. I need to figure out how to pronounce these names before I mention them, but now you might think, The Courage to be Disliked. What kind of a title is that? You're probably wondering. So this book is about, like it says, how to change your life and achieve real happiness. So for example, a lot of the decisions you make in life or the goals you have, people aren't going to like. Either because they don't think you can do them, either because they want you to be exactly like them, or they just simply don't like you because you're trying to make your life better. I think it's Bill Gates, or this has been said before by other entrepreneurs, if you hang out with 5 people, and the 5 people you hang out with are dumb, you're going to be the 6th. If you hang out with 5 people that are rich and motivated, you're going to be the 6th. If you hang out with 5 people that are lazy and broke, you're going to be the 6th. The moral of the story is, be very careful of who you choose to hang out with. Because if I hung out with a bunch of drug addicts, I probably would eventually do drugs. Also, if I didn't do drugs with them or become like them, I probably would get sick of hanging out with them because they're interested in something that I'm not interested in. So, the courage to be disliked, honestly, it takes some real courage to do stuff that people don't like. And isn't that crazy? Choosing to run a business or choosing to work over hanging out with friends is a tough thing to do. But it's also not only that. Well, it is that actually. Choosing to work and instead of hanging out with friends is a hard thing to do. Singers and songwriters, when they started off young, some of them stopped hanging out with their friends because they chose to stay home and write songs and make music. Business entrepreneurs who take risks, people that don't like risks, or business guys who want to invest in other companies or invest in other things, and it's going to take up more of their time. People won't like that because they either want to hang out with them, or they want to learn from them, or honestly, they just don't like it because they're not taking risks themselves. So think about that for a second. A lot of people who don't like what you're doing with your life, whether it's taking risks, making music, starting a business, doing a YouTube channel, they're probably upset about it because they're not doing it and they don't have the motivation to, and they're blaming you for that. So that's also something interesting to think about. Yeah, my contacts are bothering me. I'm looking into the camera and I'm just like trying not to blink all the time. But before we dive into the book, I wanted to let you all know that this is a very good book. It really spoke to me, but just don't be afraid to be disliked for the decisions you make. Now, if you're a jerk, that's different, but if you choose to do something different with your life, do not be afraid to be disliked. So the stuff I'm going to mention, or I'm about to mention in this book, will be a little interesting, but what it is that it is a story between a youth and a philosopher, and it's written like a script would be in a movie. And what it is the youth and the philosopher are talking somewhere, and I don't really know where they're at, but they're talking in like a little shack area. And as they're talking, the youth ends up asking him about life and what it means to be disliked, what it means to have happiness, and what true growth is. And it's honestly a story. It's actually a really nice story that is told by the philosopher, and the youth is just there listening and asking questions. So now, I'm going to dive into the book. Make sure to like and make sure to subscribe. I'll have a little thing at the end to remind you. But now, this is on page 33, and The Deny Trauma is the name of the chapter. Think about that, deny trauma. Now, when people say to deny something, they usually mean lie about it, but denying trauma, that's a pretty tough thing to do. But listen to this. The youth. Well, for argument, this is the youth talking. Well, for argument's sake, and now I'm really going out on a limb, say that when I was 10, I unconsciously made this choice of lifestyle or whatever. Would that even matter? You can call it personality or disposition or lifestyle, but regardless, I have already become this kind of self. The state of things doesn't change at all. So right now, he's chosen a lifestyle that he's not happy with, but he goes, I chose to be this way and I can't fix it. Now listen to what the philosopher says. That is not true. If your lifestyle is something that you were naturally born with, possibly. But something you chose yourself, then it must be possible to choose it over again. So as in the choices you make in life, you can choose another path in life. There are many stories of actors, famous actors, having good paying careers, and they choose to do acting over their paying careers and they already have something going on. There are YouTubers. There's a YouTuber that I watch who was an engineer making $80,000, $90,000 a year, sitting at a desk from 9 to 5. Now he's an entrepreneur, makes more money, but he's working more, he's traveling, and he's constantly having to upload videos and do stuff like this. But everything in life is a trade-off. Now, people don't like trade-offs, but everything in life is a trade-off. If you read the Bible, a lot of the famous stories in the Bible, there are trade-offs. The trade-off to David choosing to fight Goliath, and he could have been comfortable just being a shepherd and stuff like that. Now, God told him he had to do all that, but the point is the trade-off was he was going to have to face a giant, not knowing that God was with him and stuff like that. And like with Moses and the Red Sea, he was with Pharaoh, looked at him as a father, and was rich and didn't have to do anything. But when he left Egypt and chose to free people, the trade-off was he would have to leave all of this wealth and the people that were his family to him at the time to help free these people. Now you gotta think, did those trade-offs pay off? They did, but the moral of the story is they thought of the trade-off. You gotta think of the trade-offs. Now I say you gotta think of them. Sometimes just doing it is great, but just listing down what you're gonna get and then what you're gonna give, I think is a very good thing to do.
A few moments later.
What you're gonna get and what you're gonna give. So that was one thing that I liked. And the other argument that I have between the youth, the other conversation I have for you all between the youth and the philosopher is this is where you're talking about subjectivity and the difference between subjectivity and objectivity. Now, those are words, but I made them slightly bigger, so don't mean to scare you, but listen to this for a second. Precisely because I'm leaving it to subjectivity, the choice to view my height as either an advantage or a disadvantage is left open to me. So for example, he was comparing his height to anything, to wanting to do stuff with his life, to getting girls, he was just comparing his height as limiting himself to doing other things because of his height. Now listen to what the philosopher has to say. That's right, we cannot alter objective facts, but subjective interpretations can be altered as much as one likes. And we are inhabitants of a subjective world. We talked about this at the very beginning, right? Yes, well, water, that's 60 degrees. Now remember, the German word for feeling of inferiority, he says a German word that starts with an M. As I mentioned a moment ago, feeling of inferiority is a term that has to do with one's value judgment of oneself. So what on earth could this value be? Okay, take diamonds for instance, which are traded at a high value or currency. We find particular values for these things and say that 1 carat is this much. That prices are such and such. But if you change your point of view, a diamond is nothing but a little stone. Well, intellectually it is, says the youth. In other words, a value is something that is based on social context. The value given to a $1 bill is not an objectively attributed value, though that might be a common sense approach. If one considers its actual cost as printed material, the value is nowhere near dotted. If I were the only person in this world, and no one else existed, I'd probably be putting those $1 bills in my fireplace in wintertime. Maybe I'd be using them to blow my nose, following exactly the same logic. There should have been no reason at all for me to worry about my height. So think about what he's saying there. He goes, when he was talking about diamonds, he said, if you change your point of view of a diamond, it is just a little stone. Same thing with the dollar bill. The value is nowhere near a dollar. If I were the only person in this world and no one else existed, I'd probably be putting those $1 bills in my fireplace in wintertime. Maybe I'd be using them to blow my nose. So think about that. He would be using them to blow his nose or be using them to throw them in the fireplace. If he was the only person on earth that existed. And the reason he says that is because that is how he would view a dollar bill if he couldn't use it in today's world. If he knew it was currency but no one was on this earth and couldn't buy anything, he would view it as something, I'm going to blow my nose with it or put it in the fireplace. Now that's a far-fetched example in my opinion, because if no one existed, but honestly with height though, what he mentioned with subjectivity and objectivity. So objective facts, like he said, is yes, you are short. There's no way around that. I'm 5'4". I can wear a pair of shoes and make myself 5'8", but in reality, I can't change how tall I am. And not only that, it's like you just can't identify. Like I can't wear the shoes and say, yep, I'm 5'8". Yep, you're 5'8" in the shoes, but without them, you're 5'4". But limiting what you can do with your height is, I know people in this world, like I get made fun about my height by my friends, but telling yourself you can't get girls, you can't make money, you can't do anything because of your height, you can't be talking to yourself like that. I think it was Bruce Lee that mentioned you can't speak negatively about yourself because your mind will take those negative thoughts, because they're thoughts before they come out of your mouth, and perceive them as real, and then you'll start believing all this stuff that's not true about yourself. Now, subjective interpretations can be altered as much as one likes, and we are inhabitants of a subjective world. So we are, but honestly, I view my height as the way I was born. I was born this way. I cannot fix it. But you also got to think, I view it as the Lord made me this way, and He made me this way for a reason. He also made me this way because that's just what He did. Now, I understand in a biblical sense, a lot of people might not get that, but you can't exercise more, or you can't, I mean, I guess you can hang, but you're not going to gain a few feet just from hanging. But anyway, you cannot change your height. You just can't do it. And then, like he mentioned, value judgment, people are going to view you as short, and some people view me as short, beefy, or short and stubby. They can view you that way all they want, and that might be true physically. Physically, that might be true. But that doesn't mean you can't do anything with your life because you look that way. Also, some other people might view you as, yep, you're short, and they won't care. Then some people might nag at you about it, and that's all they will do. But people like that, you stay away from, because all they're going to do is beat you down. Don't hang around with people who beat you down all the time. Because eventually, you might not think it, but you will get sick of it, and it will take a toll on your mental health. Because that's their value judgment of you, just the guy that they pick on. And now the final thing that I have here is, this is what he is talking about. This is where he is talking about happiness. And the chapter is called All Problems are Interpersonal Relationship Problems. And what I read before I did this, let me see if I can find it here again. So, yep, all problems are interpersonal relationship problems. So that was the same chapter I read the height thing in, and this is the same chapter. I could have worded that much better. Sorry about that. But now this is the philosopher talking. Earlier, didn't you say I can't celebrate other people's happiness with all my heart? You think of interpersonal relationships as competition. You perceive other people's happiness as my defeat, and that is why you can't celebrate it. However, once one is released from the schema of competition, the need to triumph over someone disappears. One is also released from the fear that says, maybe I will lose, and one becomes able to celebrate other people's happiness. With all one's heart. One may become able to contribute actively to other people's happiness The person who always has the will to help another in times of need. That is someone who may properly be called your comrade. So in this, we're talking about people who, comrades, your friends, people you need to be around, and stuff like that. Now, I understand talking smack about other people, or judging people, is something we do in this world, but when he mentions, you can't really have the thought of maybe I will lose, or maybe I'll be defeated, and you can't just dwell on other people accomplishing something that you haven't accomplished yet. Like, you just can't do that. And the other thing he mentioned as my defeat, you still have a life to live and still are able to do things with your life. Don't look at someone who's trying to do the same thing as you are and is doing better at it as a defeat, because that's part of God's plan. That's like, you're supposed to see that, you're supposed to see them, and they're supposed to be successful right now, and you're not. Everything happens for a reason, and you are where you're at in your life because you're supposed to be. And I've said that before, I'm probably going to throw that in the subtitles, but that's true. Overall, I think it is a very healthy thing to be happy for other people's happiness, because, I mean, when you look at famous actors, you can be happy for their happiness, you can be, but when you look at famous actors, or them winning an Oscar, or them doing super well in a movie, be happy for the actor, even though you might not meet them, but look at it as motivation to take acting classes, or when you see fighters on TV, use it as motivation and as something like, as a sign, like, hey, this is what I want to do with my life. Like, I mentioned this in my last video, I watched a video of Eddie Hall becoming the strongest man in the world, his documentary, and it actually inspired me to lift weights and become a powerlifter. Not a strong man, but inspired me to do powerlifting. Now, when you say maybe I will lose, you are going to think about that a lot. Maybe I will lose. You're going to think about that with everything you compete in life, or everything that's competitive. That is what you're going to deal with in life. The thought of maybe I will lose, maybe I'll fail. When in reality, if you fail or lose, you at least tried. And when he says, you think of interpersonal relationships as competition. Like when he was saying people's happiness is my defeat, you can't look at relationships as competition. You can't, because you will be miserable. There'll be no way to measure your success. Also, you guys are there to help each other out. You are there to survive in this world and become successful in this world together. So as a world, I think we all need to work as a team to reach each other's goals. Now I know that's so rare and probably not going to happen, but view it like that. You all want to help each other with your goals. So, I really like this book, and now I didn't mention much about being disliked. Well, I guess the thing earlier, if someone dislikes you because of your height or the way you look, then honestly screw them, because they're jerks anyway if they tell you that or they even imply it. Or if people don't like you because you don't look at certain relationships as competition, you just look at it as motivation to do your own goals. That's part of it. Or the other thing that I had earlier, which was lifestyle, choosing to change your lifestyle. People are going to like you if you want to change or want to improve your life. I mean, they're not going to. There'll be people that are happy for you, but then there's going to be that whole section of people who don't like you for doing that. And to be honest, you can't be afraid of that. So overall, I really like this book. It is The Courage to Be Disliked. The title is what got my attention, because I'm like, who doesn't want to be disliked? But there are good reasons in life for you to be disliked. Not because you're a jerk, but if you want to change your life, you're going to have to deal with some people disliking you and not supporting your decisions. So, overall, I really like this book, and the takeaway for today is have the courage to do something different with your life. Have the courage to do something different and be a go-getter with a new goal you have in life. I know I didn't mention go-getter in this book, but be a go-getter. Who cares if people like you for it or not? And even if they don't like it, who cares? And if they do like it, who cares? You focus on your own goals. So thank you all for watching. I hope you all read this book, and you all have a great day.